All right, so we continue. And now I'm in this book is the Encyclopedia Britannica, a dictionary of arts, sciences, literature, and general information. This is the 11th edition, volume 18, metal to mumps. All right, the words in between those. This is from 1911, all right, University Press, Cambridge. All right, copyright of the United States of America, 1911, by the Encyclopedia Britannica Company. All right. And we're on page 812 of this book. All right, Moors. We get to the word Moors. It's right here, Moors, and we're going to zoom in. And it says here, Moors. It says Latin Mori, Greek Malpoi, or my boy, dark man. The name which, as at present used, is loosely applied to any native of Morocco. All right, a native of Morocco, not America, but in its stricter sense only to the townsmen of mixed descent. In this sense, it is also used of the Mohammedan townsmen in the other Barbary states. All right, it has been by some connected with the Hebrew and Phoenician MUUR, Western. More is a Western. Wetstein derives it from Mahir, a corruption of Amasir, with its plurals Imasir and Mazir, archaic forms of the Berber native name Amasi, the free. From Mori, the classic name for the northwestern African tribes, the northwestern district of that continent, came to be called by the Romans Mauritania. All right, Mauritania. We already learned, right? We read where they were coming from. All right, going back all the way to those people related to the Goliath, right? The term Moors, listen to this, has no real ethnological value. Again, the term Moors, in parentheses, has no real ethnological value. The tribes known to the Romans by that name were undoubtedly of Berber stock. Again, the tribes known to the Romans by that name, anybody known as Moors, they were of Berber stock, and we already got where the Berbers came from, right? David expelled them. They first appeared in history at the time of the Yugoslav War. They just appeared, right? 110, 107 BC, it says, when Mauritania west of the Molusha was under the government of a king called Bocchus, and appears to have constituted a regular and organized state. It retained its independence till the time of Augustus, who in 25 BC bestowed the sovereignty of the previously existing kingdom upon Juba II, king of Numidia, and the Numidians. At the same time, uniting it with the western portion of Numidia, from the Molucha to the Saga, which received the name of Mauritania Caseriensis, while the province that had previously constituted the kingdom, or Mauritania proper, came to be known as Mauritania Tingitana. See Mauritania. With the rest of North Africa, Mauritania was overrun by the Arabs in the 7th century. The subsequent conquest of Spain was effected chiefly by Berber tribes, but the Muslims in the peninsula, known to the Christian nations as Moors, the Muslims in the peninsula as Moors, always had a strong strain of Arab blood. They're Arabs, and in most respects became Arabized. The race was also influenced considerably by intermarriage with the natives of Spain, and when the Moors were finally expelled from that country, they had become almost entirely distinct from their Berber kinsfolk, to whom they were known as Andalusians. Andalusia, right? Where Columbus left from. Andalusia. While the mountainous parts of Morocco continued to be occupied by pure Berber people, the Shlu or Shilu, the Andalusian Moors, flocked to the coast towns and the plains of Morocco. All right? Occupied largely by Arabs. The name Moor is, however, still apply to the population speaking Arabic who inhabit the country extending from Morocco to the Senegal and to the Niger as far east as Timbuktu, example, the Western Sahara. In this vast region and in all the towns of Barbary, many of the Andalusians settled. The Moors are ethnically a very hybrid race with the more Arab than Berber blood, a more Arab than Berber blood. A common mistake is to regard them as a black race. Alright? Pay attention. Moors, more Arab than Berber, and a common mistake is to regard these Moors as a black race as indicated by the Old English phrase black a Moor, example black as a Moor. They are a white race, though often sunburnt and bronzed for generations, and both their children and those who have lived in the cities might pass anywhere as Europeans. You see how they're talking about how these so-called Moors are being called Moors, Berbers, but they're actually a white race. These types of Moors. They can pass as Europeans. The typical Moors of Morocco are a handsome race with skin the color of coffee and milk, with black eyes and black silky hair, and the features of Europeans. They wear a full beard and are characterized by a marked dignity of demeanor. There's a general tendency to obesity, which is much admired by the Moors in their women, young girls being stuffed like chickens, with paste balls mixed with honey, or with spoonfuls of olive oil and sesame to give them the necessary corpulence. The Moors are an intellectual people, courteous in manner and not altogether unlettered, but they are cruel, revengeful, and bloodthirsty. Among the pirates who infested the Mediterranean, none were worse than the Moors. They are fanatical Mohammedans regarding their places of worship and so sacred that the mere approach of a Jew or a Christian is forbidden. The Moors are temperate in their diet and simple in their dress, though among the richer classes of the towns the women cover themselves with silks, gold, and jewels, while the men indulge to excess their love of fine horses and splendid arms. The national fault is gross sensuality. The position of women is little better than a pampered slavery. They are uneducated, indolent, and vicious. Such education as the children receive is of superficial kind. Slavery flourishes and slave auctions, conducted like those of cows and mules, take place on the afternoons of state days, affording a lounge for the rich Moors, who discuss the goods offered and seek for bargains. This public sale of slaves was prohibited in the coast towns in 1850, under pressure from European powers, but means are found to evade the prohibition. Of games that young Moors play a great number, the principal one is kind of a football, more like that of Siam and Burma than that of England. Wrestling and fencing are popular, but the chief amusement of the adult Moors is the powder play, which consists of a type of military tournament, the horsemen going through lance and musket exercises or charging in review fashion, firing volleys as they gallop. Other recreations much in favor throughout Morocco are music, singing, jugglery, snake charming, and acrobatic performances. As professional storytellers, many Moors are remarkable, but the national music is monotonous and not very harmonious. Alright, so that was this dictionary's definition of the Moors. Alright, and I guess they emphasized a lot of, I guess, modern day Morocco when they wrote this. 1911, right? Talking about these white or European looking Moors, right? But they tell you straight up, that the term Moors has no real ethnological value. All right, so I just want to leave you with that. All right, so just to continue with the video and the lesson, this presentation, let's get more in depth with who Noble Drew Ali was and what works is out there regarding his information. So I was able to find two books in the archive website, and both of them are written by Herbert H. Booker. All right, so this one is The Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple Movement. All right, again by Herbert Booker II, editor Joseph E. Holloway, a New World African Press publication in association with LC May Enterprises. All right, and I also have this other book right here. All right, this is Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Zion Temple of America, same title, right? This is from 1997. And again, well, they're going to show you a college degree here from the California State University. All right, and it says the trustees of the California State University, on recommendation of the faculty of California University Norwich, have conferred upon Herbert Hillary Booker II the degree of Master of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies. All right, so that's his master's degree. Herbert Walker from the California State University. Again, this is the Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the Moorish Science Temple of America. This is a thesis submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of Master of Arts in Interdisciplinary Studies by Herbert Hillary Booker. All right, and it says in parentheses, Rakid Booker, Bay. You see that? Bay. 97. The thesis of Herbert A. Booker is approved. All right, so this was his thesis. All right, so we're gonna get into this book and the other book. So first, I want to go ahead and get into this book real quick. We'll come back to it. And I just want to read this part right here. It says the editor's introductory essay. Now it says, despite immense influences that the Noble Drew Ali had on black nationalism and black nationalistic movements in North America, we know little about him because the details of his life are sketchy and incomplete. As a result of this lack of information, the Noble Drew Ali remains one of the most mystifying figures in all of African American history. All right, this monograph provides information not readily available to the general public. All right, it's gonna read some things that we can't really find, and explores most of the available documents on this mysterious person and the things that we can. By using the shotgun approach, a web of information begins to emerge, but a web of information not connected to any firm foundation. It offers much insight, but no strong conclusion on the life and times of the Noble Drew Ali. As editor, I tried to maintain the monograph in its original form as much as possible, filling in information where needed, and editing for clarity. It was edited for a larger audience and reformatted with the audience in mind. This monograph is the first in Diasporan series published by the African New World Press. The monograph originally was the master's thesis of Herbert Booker II in the Department of Pan-African Studies at the University of California. So basically what I'm letting you know is that this is the book he later published, or pan book, whatever you want to call it, from the thesis. This one over here, remember? So this is the actual thesis right here. It's typewriter and everything. So this is the thesis. All right, we're gonna get back into this a little bit more, so you can see there's two different sources I have. I have the original and I have the book he published after. All right. So let's go back to the other book. Because the Noble Drew Ali was one of the most influential black nationalist leaders of the century, strongly influencing the growth and development of black nationalist identity between 1913 and the 1930s. His movement combined black messianism, black nationalism, and the religion of deliverance from the white man's world, culture, and religion. He redefined blackness based on identification with the Moors. His ideas and philosophy have contributed to and made possible to the rise of black messianic figures such as Father Divine, Sweet Daddy Grace, and many others. Before turning our attention to the Black Islam in America and the Noble Drew Ali, a brief outline of the origins of Islam and history of the Moors in Spain will provide a little insight as to why the mystique of the Moors and Moorish civilization so captivated the Noble Drew Ali and became the main focus of his black nationalism, theology, and identification for African Americans. All right, so this author is going to go into like his view on the history of the Moors and all the stuff that happened in Spain when they got invaded by the Moors and all that, and Arabs. He's going to actually talk about the Arab history and Islamic history as well. All right, so we're going to belly flop because he starts talking all the way back to Muhammad. All right, so we're going to get to the part where he starts talking about well, something we've read already. right? And it was regarding the Mohammedans, or the Almoravids, right? The Almoravids, right, who was basically, being referred to as Moabites when they were invading Spain, right? We already got this, right? Let's not forget what we've learned so far, right? Because this is what I'm saying. It's the information is so spread out, and it's so split up and broken up into different things that we can't gather a foundational truth. But that's what I'm trying to help you with here. Again, I'm just trying to go with what's recorded, factual. I try to go past my opinions and what I think, and I try to prove my opinions and what I think. I try to, so I can have something to corroborate with and something to show, receipts. I'm talking about sources, something I can rely on to say, hey, but this is what happened really. You're talking about specific time in history and specific people. Who were these people, right? So now it says here, the Moors in Spain. All right, the Moors in Spain. I just wanted to show what I found here. It says the Arab conquest of North Africa was completed in 708 CE when Musa ibn Nusayr conquered all of Morocco except Ceuta, which was already under rule of the Byzantine governor Count Julian. All right, so this area was under Byzantine rule. Now they're going to say these are Christian, Byzantine Christians, but what does that mean, Christian? A lot of these people like Prester John, they were being called Nestorian Christians, but they weren't really Christians. Are these people just following Hebrewic traditions, culture, or are they Hebrews, really Jews, right? Whatever they want to call them. And they were just being labeled Christian. All right, it seems like they were doing that a lot. They was just saying, oh, these were Christians, right? Now, Byzantine governor Count Julian, it says the king of Spain took advantage of Count Julian's daughter when he sent her to visit to Spain. All right, so I guess this dude was from Morocco, right? Julian, he was a Byzantine governor, right? And well, right here, they're not even saying they're Christians, because we're gonna read that in other accounts. But just focus how they're not even saying Byzantine Christians or anything else. They're just saying the Byzantine governor. All right. So he sent his daughter to Spain, and there was a king there, right? And he took advantage of his daughter, maybe sexually or something, or this sign to her. And, he got the word, and he was pissed. And it says, as a measure of revenge, Count Julian decided to aid the Moors. The Moors were black Africans from North Africa who converted to Islam. So they converted to Islam. They weren't Islamic. Also known as Berbers and Almoravids. Now, we gotta dodge the hijack right here big time, because he's just said, this dude Herbert Booker watching, even though he has a master's and stuff, right? He's saying that the Moors are black Africans from North Africa. So when he found them, or when during this time period, I guess they were Africans because they were in Africa, right? And in North Africa, right? But we already read who the Berbers and Almoravids were. All right, let's not forget that. In their own history, in their own accounts, and in real historical literature regarding nations, people, history, right? Like, these people are said to have come from Canaan or Asia. These Almoravids, or these Berbers, right? Especially these Berbers, go back all the way to Goliath. Remember that? And the Almoravids, all right? So Goliath, who got expelled by King David from Canaan, from the holy place Jerusalem, city of David. That was in America. All right, so this is very deep. This is where I want to try to show you. So these are the so-called Moors, right, that took over Spain, right? These Berber Almoravids, specific people who were actually not from Africa originally, but had come from the land of Canaan. Right? And that was in America. And why were they in Canaan? Because their ancestor, Canaan, had settled in the lot of Shem. That was not his lot. And so Jehoshua, right? Joshua had to, Quetzalcoatl had to drive them out. And it repeated again with King David. All right, so these people had to ask for permission, remember, to settle in Morocco and all that, and they created those kingdoms, remember? So yeah, I guess at this point you would call them black Africans in North Africa, from North Africa, who converted to Islam. They weren't, they converted. All right, I guess you can call them Africans at that time, but they have a deeper history. There's a further overstanding that needs to be done. All right, so you can understand what's going on. So, all right, just want to show you that. So let me just continue reading a little bit. It said it was these Islamicized Berbers. It was these Islamicized Berbers, right, who actually had come from Canaan, Promised Land, America, who crossed the Straits of Gibraltar in 711 CE and conquered Spain, where they ruled until 1492. What also happened in 1492, people? Yes, Columbus supposedly discovered America, right? But he just found a land they didn't know. You were already here. You can't discover something that's already been discovered, that was never lost. At least not to its people that were there already. I'm going to just read a little bit more. Alright, so it says Musa ibn Nusayr placed an army of 300 Arabs and 12,000 Africans under the leadership of the Moorish general Tariq, crossed the Straits of Gibraltar, and landed at Guadalete in southern Spain. Tariq's African army captured several Spanish towns near Gibraltar, among them Heraclea. The Moors took over the city of Cordoba as the capital of their new conquest. Tariq then advanced northward into Andalusia. Andalusia. That was one of the biggest, settlements of the Moors, and in Andalusia, and that's actually where Christopher Columbus left from. All right. The battle lasted about a week before Tariq's army was victorious. He conquered Spain and established an African dynasty, bringing Spain under the rule of the Moors. After overrunning the Iberian Peninsula, the Moors attempted to extend their rule to France. It was in France that the Moors experienced a setback when Charles Martel defeated them. The Moors settled down and retired to Spain. There they laid the foundation for Spanish civilization. They are the ones who founded Spain. And that's history, right? We ain't gonna take that from them. We ain't taking real history from anybody. Alright? So I just wanted to read that real quick. Alright, so further down in this book, it says, after 1492, the Moors were defeated by the Spaniards. Both Moors and Jews were expelled, and those who stayed were forcibly converted to Catholicism and became known as Moriscos. Alright, you hear that? So, both Moors and Jews, remember they had a partnership going on, right? We read that before already. Specific Jews. Who are they talking about? They talking about Israelites? Who are they talking about? Hebrews? You know, Jews. Most of Spain was Sephardic Jews. Alright? And Moors, right? The Moabites, Almoravids, Berbers. They were expelled in 1492, the same year Columbus came to America. You understand what's going on here? Who was in Columbus' fleet? Who was Columbus? He was just another converso. He was just another Morisco. While others were enslaved. So if you didn't convert, you had to bounce. The Spaniards began sending Moriscos or Moors with their expeditions to the New World. Alright? The Spaniards began sending Moriscos or Moors with their expeditions to the New World. And they weren't just slaves. A lot of the captains, a lot of the ship, the ones who were navigating the ships, the captains were Moors, Moriscos. Go check out my video, Columbus and his Negro friends. Alright? Yeah, so we will touch on that in this book, in this video as well, a little bit. Just reminded. But it's going to tell it here a little bit. So it says that, again, these Moors went on the expeditions to the New World. Alright? The Moriscos were among the first discoverers of the New World. Alright? Think about that. So this whole time, you know, when we're little, when we're growing up, even today, they still always show us white Spanish people or European, you know, Caucasian white looking people, pale, coming over as, you know, being the Spaniards and all these. But there was a lot of Moriscos or Moors, Moabites, from Canaan, Promised Land, America. They were originally from here. Why do you think it was so much easier for the Moriscos to be the first discoverers of the New World? How come they had knowledge of these islands being over here, and they did have commerce before Columbus? They've already been coming over here, back and forth. The Carthaginians were going over to that side all the time, right? So-called Phoenicians, remember? They got driven out of Canaan, America, and ended up in North Africa. They ended up taking over Iberia until 1492, and then they came back to what? To get the lot they had before, that they had settled in without permission. Now, I'm not trying to bash anybody, I'm just trying to go with what I'm correlating here, all right? So again, these people, you know, you see the full circle is what I'm trying to show you. Do you see the full circle? They always been wanted their land, this lot, Shem's lot. They've been always wanted Shem's lot. They always wanted to come back. There was a barrier, right? It was like some kind of barrier over there. Oh, you can't pass the Atlantic until, you know, Most High let that happen. As Columbus says, he was guided by the Holy Spirit. His whole thing was like a pilgrimage. His whole thing was prophecy to him. He knew he was being helped. All right. But that's a whole different subject, right? Let's take focus. So it says the Moriscos were among the first discoverers of the New World. All right. The Moriscos were the first. They were the Spaniards. They came to the New World as explorers, navigators, soldiers, servants, and slaves. Everything, not just slaves. Because everybody who argues this say no, but because they were enslaved. They were enslaved Africans. No. A lot of the explorers were Moors. A lot of the navigators, the ones who drove the ships, the soldiers who killed all the American aboriginals over here, were also Moors. So you think it's a black and white thing. You always think it's a black and white thing, and it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Alright? They made their impact on history and culture of the Americas. When Columbus arrived in the New World, his pilot was Alonso Pedro Nino, the Moriscos. Alright? Pedro Nino, the Ninos, those are so-called black people. Those are Negro people. That family, that whole Nino family. Alright? We've gone over this. This is historic. Didn't just come as slaves. They helped in the invasion. They had nothing else to lose. They had just been driven out of Spain. Do you understand what I'm saying? They just were driven out of Spain, the Jews and Moors. They had nothing to lose other than to come here and take your riches. Take their so-called lot back. That their ancestor Canaan had taken without permission. In 1501, Spain lifted the earlier ban on the slave trade and permitted Africans to go to the new Spanish lands. You see that? 30 Moriscos, or Africans as he says, because remember he's thinking they all started there in North Africa. But there's a whole history before that, right? Including Nuflo de Olano, where with Balboa, when he discovered the Pacific Ocean, Hernan Cortez carried Moriscos with him to Mexico, and one of them planted and harvested the first wheat crop in the New World. Wow. So they brought wheat to us. Oh, thanks. Now we got gluten. Now we got gluten problems because we were so used to corn. We had corn. The mother plant. We had corn. But they brought their wheat with them to the New World. In 1520, 2 Africans accompanied Velas. Alvarado took 200 blacks with him to Quito. 200 blacks? Soldiers. Moriscos were with Pizarro on his Peruvian expedition. They call it an expedition. Remember these expeditions, we got this in past videos, that was code word for slave raids. Slave raids that were enslaving the American Indians, and invasion, conquest. Talk about expedition. The Moriscos were with Pizarro during their slave raids. against the Aboriginals of America and carried his body back to the cathedral after he was murdered by the Aboriginals. And so they even carried his body back, made sure he got a proper burial. They honored him, these Moriscos Moors who had converted to Catholicism. You understand? In 1525, the Moors saved Amagro and Bilidiva during their expedition from the Indians. They saved them from you, your ancestors again. Yo, we'll save you, come with us. From the interior of North America to southwestern part of the United States, the Moors assisted in the discovery of new lands. So-called discovery, right? They want to water it down. Remember this Herbert, I believe he's a pale person, white, So, again, this was an invasion. It was genocide. We've already shown this. They came with their diseases, with their religion, with their, war, with their armies, soldiers, with their plagues. This wasn't no discovery. Again, from the interior of North America to the southwestern part of the United States, the Moors assisted in the discovery of new lands. Assisted in what? In the invasion and conquest and genocide of these new lands. Moors came with Alarcón and Coronado in the conquest of New Mexico. So you're going to see there's a pattern. Moors were all over, and almost every famous explorer historian had Moors. But the reality is most of them were Moors, and these explorers were Moors too. Most of them. Alright, Moors came with Alarcón and Coronado in the conquest of New Mexico. Moriscos accompanied Narvaez on his expedition of 1527 and were with Cabeza de Vaca on his exploration of the southwestern United States. Estevanico, we got this. If you've been following 432 The Drop Radio, King Drop, breaking down Estevanico, the Moor, an African explorer, says, conquistador, pirate, conquistador, opened up New Mexico and Arizona for the Spaniards. They sent the brother ahead. It was like, yo, go talk to the Aboriginals. They look like you. They sent him ahead. He opened up the New Mexico and Arizona for the Spaniards. He was a black Moroccan guide, an interpreter who came to Florida from Spain in 1527 with the Panfilo de Narvaez expedition, slave raid. Remember, expedition is code word for slave raid. Who were there enslaving? American Aboriginals. So-called Negro American Aboriginals. And this other so-called Negro or so-called black Moroccan guide helped him. Estevanico. Estevanico sent back wooden crosses to indicate his progress. He put wooden crosses. They brought their gods of stone and wood. As the size of the crosses increased until they were as tall as a man, the Spaniards realized his mission had been successful in finding what he believed to be the fabulous and fabled 7 cities of gold. The 7 cities of Cibola, the 7 cities of gold. Alright, you hear what's going on? You see this history they never tell us? Do you see this history that they never tell us about? They just want you to picture black and white. They just want you to say, oh, the Spaniards, the English, all these white people came here. No, it wasn't just white people. And they were looking for your cities of gold, your mythical cities of gold. That was all over here. From North America to South America, gold everywhere. This is the true terrestrial paradise. The 7 cities of gold of Cibola, Hawanaku, right? After entering what is today Arizona, Estevanico, Little Prince, at the market, learned what happened to him and immediately began petitioning for his freedom. A Southern journalist told the story to President John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State Henry Clay, whose personal intercession persuaded Prince Master to sign his manumission papers. Abidi al-Rahman Ibrima was released almost 40 years after enslavement, later through the intercession of U.S. President John Quincy Adams. In the cases of John Ben Solomon and Abd al-Rahman Ibrima, Muslim slaves were accorded more respect and prestige. You hear what's going on? The Muslim slaves were accorded more respect and prestige than the other slaves. What's the other slave? The American Indians, the American Aboriginals. But the Muslim slaves had more respect and prestige. In the slave South, there was a tradition to view Muslim slaves more positively than other Hawah Hijack American Indian slaves, or other so-called blacks, other so-called Negroes. Hawah Hijack with Africans. They were enslaving you. We already proved this in other videos. Go back, get in the classroom if you haven't seen them. This fact did not go unnoticed by the slaves. Your ancestors was like, yo, why they treating those people better than us? That's messed up. Why they treating them better than us? We have the same complexion. What's going on? Alright? So, you know, remember, I'm reading from Noble Drew Ali in the Moorish Science Temple of America by Herbert Booker, PhD. He has his master's, you know, and this was his thesis, his introduction, really. All right, and we're still in the actual introduction, and I just wanted to show you that, you know. All right, so now we're in the JewishEncyclopedia.com. It says the unedited full text of the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia. All right, this is from the 1906 Jewish Encyclopedia, what we're about to read, and it's regarding Spain and the Jewish, I guess, history there, right? Because it is the Jewish Encyclopedia, right? All right, so I'm gonna go down to a part where it says the arrival of the Moors. All right, we've got this article and this in my past video of Columbus and his Negro friends. So I just wanted to go ahead and just read this again. All right, and the reason well, we just read, right, that, you know, well, we read that the Spaniards, you know, a lot of them were Moors, right? And we know that a lot of these ships during the conquest and the whole slavery thing time period, you know, these ships were being funded by Jewish people, right? Jews, right? The Jews were funding these ships, right? So there's some kind of allegiance there. We've already read there was, right? So let's just see what it says here. It says, Tisa, the son of Egika, is described sometimes as paragon of virtue and sometimes as veritable fiend. The later description of him is the one generally given by ecclesiastical writers. Lucas de Tuy, Archbishop of Rodrigo, Ambrosio de Morales, Juan do Mariana, and other Spanish historians hold that this king, to further heretical ends, misused the previous decisions of the councils, that he recalls the exiled Jews, granted them privileges, and even entrusted them with public offices. Whether this be true or whether it, as is more probable, he oppressed them, as his predecessors had done, it remained a fact that the Jews, either directly or through their co-religionists in Africa, encouraged the Mohammedans to conquer Spain. Well, who? The Jews? You see what I'm showing you here, right? Jewish Encyclopedia 1906. The Jews encouraged the Mohammedans to conquer Spain, and that they greeted them as their deliverers. You see that? After the Battle of Jerez, 711, in which African Jews fought bravely under the Kula al-Jahudi. So what are these African Jews? And in which the last Gothic king, Rodrigo, and his nobles were slain. The conquerors, Musa and Tariq, were everywhere victorious. The conquered cities Cordoba, Malaga, Granada, Seville, and Toledo were placed in charge of Jewish inhabitants. You see? The Moors that came, the Almoravids, helped them, right, keep charge of these cities, the Jewish inhabitants, who had been armed by the Arabs. They had been armed because they helped them against the Gothic kings, right? The victors removed the disabilities which had oppressed the Jews so heavily and granted them full religious liberty, requiring them to pay only the tribute of 1 golden dinar per capita. Adolfo de Castro, Historia de los Judíos en España. Alright? So, you know, look at today's situation. You got this whole The battle in the Middle East, right, between Jewish people and Arabs, the Arab world. But you see, at one point, the Arabs were the Jews' deliverers. This specific type of Jews, these Spanish Jews, Sephardic Jews, right? Possible converts to Judaism, not real Hebrews. Some of them probably were. But who were these Sephardic Spanish Jews? We're going to get into that. But you can see that this history, there's a whole history left out. Right? There is a coalition there. There is something. These same people funded these Moors hundreds of years later to go supposedly discover America on their supposed expedition / slave raids. Right? A new era now dawned for the Jews of the Pyrenean Peninsula, whose number had been considerably augmented. Those who had followed the Arab conquerors, as well as by later immigrants from Africa. Hardly a decade after the conquest, however, many Jews left their new home in order to follow a man named Sonaria, who had appeared in Syria and had proclaimed himself the Messiah. You see that the governor Ambisa, who was collecting enormous sums for the fiscus, confiscated the property of the emigrating Jews for this purpose. Under the Umayyad al-Rahman, the first, whose greatness is said to have been foretold by a learned Jew who became his advisor, a flourishing kingdom was established, of which Cordoba was the center. During Abd al-Rahman's reign, of the Jews devoted themselves to the service of the caliphate. You hear that? During his reign, the Jews, these Sephardic Spanish Jews, devoted themselves to the service of the caliphate, to the study of the sciences, and to commerce and industry, especially to training in silken slaves, and this way promoting the prosperity of the country. Southern Spain became an asylum for the oppressed Jews of other parts. The Moors that were there, these Arab, these so-called black, Moroccan, these Almoravian people who invaded Spain at this time and allowed these Jewish people to remain there, and helping them conquer or establish the kingdom there. And Iberia, they basically allowed other Jews. It became like what Israel is supposed to be today, right? So you see that? You see all the influence. You see how much Jewish influence was in Spain and Moorish, right? And these same two groups, right? These same two groups got kicked out in 1492, the same year America was supposedly discovered. You gotta understand, there's no coincidences. Alright? Bodo Eliezer, a convert to Judaism, went to Cordoba, where he is said to have endeavored to win proselytes for Judaism from among the Spanish Christians, but that the mass of the Spanish Jews of that period in question hated the Christians and aimed at making proselytes is not correct. Alright? Then it talks about this dude's reign over here. Some more drop. Alright? Samuel Inoniga, Negdila. Some more drop on him. I want to read this part here since we've read about the Almoravides. It says, under the Almoravides, terrified by the conquest of King Alfonso VI of Castile, Al-Mutamid, heedless of the remonstrances of his son, called to his aid the ambitious Yusuf ibn Tashfin of North Africa. In the terrific battle of Salaka, October 1086, in which Jews fought bravely both in the Christian and in the Moorish army. So Jews were fighting on both sides. Alright, they had Jews fighting with the Moors. You see? Yusuf won a victory in the sovereign power. The Almoravides, a warlike, fanatical religious sect, the Almoravites, fanatical religious sect, I mean, this is according to the Jewish encyclopedia, right? Now became the rulers of southern Spain. They did nothing to improve the welfare of the Jews. Yusuf ibn Tashfin endeavored to force the large and wealthy community of Lucena to embrace Islam. Under the reign of his son Ali in 1106-73, the position of the Jews was more favorable. Some were appointed mushawira, collectors and custodians of the royal taxes. The business, right? The ones dealing with the money, always. Others entered the service of the state, holding the title of vizier or Nazi. You see this? Others holding what? The title of vizier or Nazi. Jewish people calling themselves Nazi or vizier, Nazi. You see this craziness? You think you know history? This is in the Jewish Encyclopedia, 1906. Jewish people were offering their services, right? They were being appointed many things. One of them was holding the title of vizier or Nazi. Nazi. I thought these were their enemies. Nazi. Among these may be mentioned the poet and physician Abu Ayyub Solomon ibn al-Mu'al of Seville. Do the research. Abraham ibn Meir ibn Kabniel. Do the research. Abu Isaac bin Muharjar. Do the research. And Solomon I ibn Farusal, murdered May 2nd, 1108. The old communities of Seville, Granada, and Cordoba prospered anew. Alright, so just wanted to show you that little bit another part of history, right? And you see how these, it's so crazy, right? You know, I'm rereading this, right? Because I've read this in the other video, alright? But yeah, this is really, you know, craziness that they don't teach us. So we're going to learn that Andalusia, as it's highlighted here, it says that under the Almohades, the power of the Almoravides was short duration. A fanatic of North Africa, Abdallah ibn Tumar appeared about 1112 as the upholder of Muhammad's original teachings concerning the unity of God and became the founder of a new party called the Almohades or Musmotas Shebet Jehuda. History gives the correct dates as 4872. Upon the death of Abdallah, Abd al-Mumin took the leadership and endeavored with sword and brand to exterminate the Almoravids as political and religious enemies. In North Africa, he won victory after victory. In the same year in which the Second Crusade brought new distress to the German Jews, Abd al-Muhim passed over to southern Spain in order to wrest that country from the Almoravids. He conquered Cordoba, 1148, Seville, Lucena, Montilla, Aguilar, and Baena, and within a year, the whole of Andalusia was in the possession of Almohades. As in Africa, so in Spain, the Jews were forced to accept the Islamic faith. The conquerors confiscated their property and took their wives and children, many of whom were sold as slaves. The most famous Jewish educational institutions were closed, and the beautiful synagogues everywhere destroyed. The terrible persecution by the Almohades lasted for 10 years. On account of these persecutions, many Jews made a pretense of embracing Islam. But a great number fled to Castile, whose tolerant ruler Alonso the Seventh received them with hospitality, especially in Toledo. Alright, so there's a whole history you see. So this other group of Arabs, or Al-Mohammedis as they were called, came in and kind of took the power of the Almoravids, like the Berbers. And so it's not just like there was one group of Moors, right, ruling Spain for all these years. You see there's a lot of clash even in between what you would consider more. These people, right? These different nations and tribes, these sects, these, you know, I guess families, right? All right, so we're back in the book, The Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple Movement by Herbert H. Booker II, right? And we're just gonna continue where we were kind of left off before, and it's talking about the Noble Drew Ali early life. All right, so just like this book kind of drew a little history of the Moors, right, historically, and whatever else was not available, you know, he had to break that kind of down to understand why, you know, the importance of why Noble Drew Ali was, you know, letting people know about the Moorish history, and there was a Moorish history, right, whatever you would consider Moorish, these people that were in this time invading Spain, and what these Almoravids, Almohades, and these different sects and these different people, Berbers, right, that we already know most of these people seem to have come out of Canaan, right, the place where the promised land was, and we correlate to that being here in America. All right, so there's a whole deep history here that Noble Drew Ali seems to have been influenced by, that he knew some way through his life, where he grew up, his teachings, he came across this information, and he wanted to tell it to everybody. It's just that it just seems that he had a specific intention with it, this information, and how he wanted to portray it and bring it out to people. So I'm not going to say much more other than that. Let's just read, what's written and what he said himself. We already know he said, "You are the ancient Moabites and Canaanites that came out of Canaan, that were driven out by Joshua." He already said that. All right, so let's get a little bit more information. It says, "The Noble Drew Ali Early Life, according to a privately published essay by Ravana Bey of the Moorish Academy of Chicago." All right, look into that. The Noble Drew Ali's father was said to have been a Moorish extraction. So what does that mean? And his mother of Cherokee ancestry, Cherokee. All right. By the early 1880s, Ravana Bey claims the Drew family settled in Newark, New Jersey, where they met and studied with the master adept Jamal al-Adin al-Afghani. You see, 1838 to 1897 is when he lived, who visited the United States in the winter of 1882 and 1883. According to him, the Druze were not only initiated into the Salafaya, Afghani's political reform movement, but also into the Brethren of Purity, the Ikhwan al-Safa. The Noble Drew Ali was born Timothy Drew on January 8, 1886. All right? Timothy Drew, a Capricorn. Timothy Drew in North Carolina, a child of former slaves who lived among the Cherokee Indians and who are said to have adopted him. Now you see this? You see this craziness? So now all of a sudden he's adopted, right? So he's not these people's son now all of a sudden, who were slaves, supposed slaves among the Cherokee Indians. So we dodged all the hijacks here, right? Because we kind of broken down what was really going on in actual history in these times when we're talking about Indian people owning slaves and who these slaves really were. Were these really Africans or other American Indian slaves? And were the Cherokee really light-skinned, the original Cherokee? Because the Cherokee is a general term. There's a lot of tribes that are considered Cherokee. They had different names. All right, Dane Calloway let you know that. All right, so now we don't know what he is, because now he's just an adopted person. So who's to say where he's from, whose his real parents are now? Now that lives us at a mystery. You see why his life is filled with mystery. They try to say some of it is mysterious. All right. Now it says again that these people adopted him. All right, but these people were living in a Cherokee reservation amongst the Cherokee Indians as slaves or servants, indentured servants. And were these other, American Indians, from other tribes that these Cherokee had taken, in warfare, or, what's the real history? That's what we have to dig on specifically. If you know more of the story, I would love that. All right. An interesting hypothesis concerning Timothy Drew's ancestry is that he was perhaps a descendant of Bilali Muhammad. Perhaps, right? This is conjecture, right? A slave who lived on Sapelo Island of the Georgia coast. All right. In a diary written in Arabic, Bilali Muhammad demonstrated a continuity of Islamic identity from 18th century slave society to the present. If Bilali Muhammad was not Drew Ali's biological ancestor, we must consider him at least the spiritual grandfather of the Noble Drew Ali. All right. So again, conjecture, right? They're just like, hey, if that's not his dad, then definitely his spiritual granddad. All right. Well, okay. Now, you see, right? Now, let's continue. It says, later in life, the Noble Drew Ali always wore a feather in his vest to symbolize his Native American connection. His mother foresaw great things for him, but she died and left him with a wicked aunt who beat him, leaving lifelong physical and mental scars. All right, so now we got, this story of Drew Ali. A lot of you probably know this already. He grew up with a wicked aunt, and she beat him and all that. Like, she tortured him. She did a lot of crazy stuff to him, and as it is told. All right. His aunt once threw him into a blazing furnace, but according to his retelling of the story, Allah saved him. So this was Timothy Drew's accounts, I guess. As soon as Timothy Drew could escape, he ran away and joined the gypsies. So he ran away. Now, you know, remember, his parents were supposed slaves in amongst the Cherokee. So his aunt would be a slave too, or what? So what's going on here? You know, his adopted aunt, right? She's not even biological, supposedly, right? But then he had to run away, like, you know, just like a runaway slave. So there's more to this story, is what I'm saying. Is what you know, there's something deeper in there of who this person Timothy Drew is. All right, so he joined the gypsies. So he ran away and joined the gypsies. We're talking about gypsies in America, right? In America. One day while walking along, he heard a voice say, "If you go, I will follow." He tried to ignore the voice, but it kept repeating and ringing in his ear. "If you go, I will follow." Until finally he left the gypsies in search of the true knowledge of his people. After leaving the gypsies, he spent some time working as railway expressman. According to tradition and oral history, Drew also took a job as a magician in a traveling circus act. You hear this? He was a magician, playing tricks, traveling circus, an act. At age 16, Timothy Drew shipped out as a merchant seaman and ended up in Egypt. Then at 16, all of a sudden, he's in Egypt. Now, according to most authors, the noble Drew Ali knew nothing of any deeper mystery until he visited to Egypt sometime before 1912. All right. There he met the last priest of an ancient cult of high magic. All right, so he's been a magician in a circus, and then he went to Egypt. And like a movie, he found this last priest, the very last priest. Who sent him to Egypt at 16? How did he get over there? What was his intention? What's the whole backstory about that? So he ended up meeting the last high priest of an ancient cult of high magic, who took him to the pyramid of Cheops in Giza. You hear all this? He was led in blindfolded and then abandoned. This sounds like an initiation to me, where Timothy Drew found his way out of unaided, and still blindfolded. The Magus recognized him as a potential devotee and offered him initiation into their secret society. Secret society. Why did Timothy Drew Ali know all this information? It's what I've been trying to ask a lot of the Moors. Like, you know, how did he get all this information, and why did you guys for 20, 40, 50 years have access to this information? Are you also part of a secret society? Fraternity? I don't know. Do you? I respect whatever you do. But now we have information going around that we can all discern, all of us, with our cultural background, our own overstanding of things, you know, not just one person who has access to the info because he's a part of a certain secret society, and then he teaches it as a secret society. He does the same, and so everybody's just secret. And, oh, we got the info. You know, we've been known this. Oh, we're the ones. Oh, look, I got this book. You know, what about the rest of us, right? So he offered him so this high priest from an ancient cult, just like a movie, high priest from an ancient cult, said, "Yo, you're perfect." And they initiated him into their secret society. After completing his initiation, he received the same Sharif, meaning noble, Abdul Ali. He then officially changed his name to Noble Drew Ali. While in Egypt, his prophecy manifested as a book, the Circle 7 Quran. Later, he was recognized by the Sultan Al-Sis Al-Saud in Mecca. Scholars have not been able to trace the sources for most of the Noble Drew Ali scriptures in the Circle 7 Quran. Also, no one seems to have discovered the sources of his ideas about Moorish science or the Moorish Empire. All right. In 1912, the young Drew Ali apparently wrote a letter to President Woodrow Wilson asking him to turn over the Moorish flag. Turn it over, which he believed had been hidden in a safe in Independence Hall in 1776 by George Washington. The reason for this strange act constitutes something of an origin of myth for the Moorish Science Temple. The noble Drew Ali believed that blacks in America were actually Moors. So, actually what? Moabites? Almoravites, Moabites, Berbers, Canaanites, descendants of Ham? What do you? That's what you're saying, Drew Ali? Because you already said that the Moors, right? That is, in contemporary terms, natives of Morocco. All right, in contemporary, you hear that? So if we were to understand that in 1990, well, whenever this was written, 1997, that would mean they were from Africa, Morocco, right? He's not saying nothing from over here. Nothing from over here. In 1774, the founding fathers had met in Philadelphia and decreed that only Negroes were subject to slavery. Only those labeled as Negroes, status. It's status. It's not about complexion. It's status. Statute laws were subject to slavery. In 1776, this decree became law under their independent regime. Since the blacks had forgotten their true identity as Moors, they accepted this essentialistically linguistic act of terrorism, and along with the word, the conditions of slavery. So this is according to Noble Drew Ali, right? It says Noble Drew Ali believed that under the Statute of Virginia of 1682, like I just said, statute laws, black African Muslims were exempt from such bondage. So the Muslims, remember, they were more prestige. Remember that they had more prestige than the other slaves. See, he's saying that because of that act, the black African Muslims were exempt from such bondage. Since Morocco was the first African country to recognize the United States diplomatically in 1786, Moors could not be slaves. All right. So, what are you talking about, Drew Ali? All right, because when you, I mean, if you do your genealogy, right, you keep going back certain periods. I mean, you're gonna see you've been here for a while. So when he's saying that could be true, that some of these, so-called black people in America, North America, are descendants of actually Moorish people from Morocco. They can trace it through genealogy and everything, so they would be exempt if I guess the way he's saying it. But how is he going to generalize and say that all the people of dark skin complexion, copper-colored tribes of America, all the aboriginals, are of Morocco, the ancestry? You know what I mean? Like, you're generalizing, right? So, hey, maybe it could work. You're saying you're right about that act, but then, then you gotta, how you generalizing? How can you say everybody is a Moor? Or because you just said they were the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. I'm just trying to understand you, But I'm just gotta go with what I'm overstanding. Really, that's what I'm overstanding. So, all right, let's just keep reading a little bit. It says, George Washington, of course, was a slaveholder and was not about to tamper with the status of Moors. According to Ali, he cut down the red banner of the Moors and hid it away. The masking legend for this act is the story of Washington cutting down the proverbial cherry tree. All right, so that's the story that the Moors have about their flag being in the White House and all that, I guess, and them hiding it. The noble Drew Ali believed that if the blacks had only honored their father and mother and not strayed after the gods of Europe, you see that? That sounds to me like the fifth commandment. Isn't that the fifth commandment? Honor thy father and mother. And because you did not follow the laws, and you started worshiping other gods. Now he's saying it just like what the Israelites did, right? They would not have suffered slavery. You would have not have been cursed, right? So if I say that the Hebrews had these laws and that Moses warned them what would happen if they didn't follow these laws, and you're saying, well, that's Bible stuff. But Noble Drew Ali is saying the exact same thing. He just took that from the Ten Commandments. Where is he getting that from? That's the exact same thing. That's the fifth commandment. Honor thy father and mother. They're talking about Hawah, the male and female, right? The mother, the spirit, the wisdom, Hawah, the most high, father and mother. They would have not suffered slavery. Deuteronomy 28 would have not happened, nor would they be ignorant of their true identity, nationality, and birthright. He's right about this. All this he's right about. All this is right about. That has nothing to do with being Islamic MOOR. This statement is so true, but it has nothing to do with all that. We've already heard this already. We already know where this comes from. According to Moorish science mythology, the hidden Moorish flag was turned over to the noble Drew Ali, thus prompting the founding of the Moorish Science Temple in 1913. Alright, so according to their mythology, he got the flag, and I guess he probably hanged it up in the founding of this first temple in 1913. Obviously, there is no objective of literal truth to this story, but its symbolic truth throws much light on Drew Ali's prophetic sense of mission. Alright, there's no literal truth to this story. Show the proof. Let's prove that. Alright, if it's true, let's prove that. In other words, the name means everything. By taking the Asiatic names, dress, and diet, the noble Drew Ali was attempting to provide black people with an identity based in Africa. Based in Africa, not America. Based in Africa. So that's what you down with? You understand? He had a whole he had a whole plan, and it wasn't no controversy. That's just how he was gonna run. Like, he was gonna teach people that, and that was his whole agenda. It's not a, you know, it's not an evil or that's his agenda. That was his goal, to put you in Africa with an identity based in Africa. Oh, now you're African. Oh, let's forget about my mom's side. She was Cherokee. Well, actually, she was a slave. She's not my real mom. Oh, so mysterious. All right. Now, membership was open for blacks and Asiatics people. What does that mean? Including Amerindian, including the so-called Negro. That's everybody. That is the blacks. What are you talking about? And Chinese and Japanese, and even whites who were members of the Celts or Persians. You hear that? Even whites. So I thought you were hating the white man. And why the Celts and Persians? The noble Drew Ali concluded that enslaved Africans were not really black, but were Moors. You ain't black. He's right about that. You ain't black. That's a crayon color. So enslaved Africans, dodged the hijack. They were enslaving American Indians. We already got all that proof. It's history. So now you're not black, but let's call you Moor. And you had been falsely enslaved. Of course you got falsely enslaved. This is your land over here. How can somebody come over here and enslave you? Yeah, you've been falsely enslaved and falsely identified and falsely been told fairy tales. So now you're enslaved Africans who are Moors. Right? That's the whole thing. His mission was to identify black Americans' true homeland, which is Morocco, North Africa. All right, not America. He wasn't going with the whole you're an aboriginal from America. All right. Their true religion of Islam and their true ancestry among Asiatics. Hamites, Asiatics, Canaanites, your true land, Morocco. He believed he had been sent by Allah to teach African Americans their true identity and religion, which had been stolen by Euro-Americans. To reaffirm the lost and now found identity, Ali issued nationality and identification cards to his followers, affirming that they were not Negroes. You're not the Negroes, remember? Ham, the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. You're not the Negroes, but the Moors. But you're Moor, you're Hamite, you're Canaanite, Moabite, Ethiopian, Libyan, Egyptian, and thus should be bestowed the proper respect and recognition by white Americans. At age 27 in Newark, New Jersey, the noble Drew Ali had a dream in which he was ordered to found a religion for the uplifting of fallen mankind. So he had a vision, a dream, and especially for the lost found nation of African Americans, the lost found nation, right? The lost tribes of Israel. What are you talking about, lost found nation? He believed that his ancestors were Canaanites, all right? He believed his ancestors were Canaanites, and that Ham, or Adoniram, as the Masons call him, father of Canaan, was present at the building of Solomon's temple, and because of this, called his first Moorish science temple in Newark the Canaanite temple. You understand that the first Moorish temple was called the Canaanite temple? Canaanite, you're a Canaanite. So when I'm telling you, you comment on my videos, and I'm telling you, but Drew Ali said you were ancient Moabite and Canaanite. So is that what you're saying? And I'm not a Moabite or Canaanite, and most Americans, most so-called Black Americans, are not Canaanite or Hamite, right? But then you said, but that's not what Drew Ali said. That's a, that has nothing to do with, like, hey, I'm just going with what he said and what he did. He established a temple in Newark, New Jersey. This is history, and he called it the Canaanite temple. Canaanite temple, calling you Canaanite. So I'm asking you right now, you're listening, watching, are you a Canaanite? Are you a Moabite, Hamite, a descendant? If so, then that's cool. But don't generalize and put that identity on everybody here in America. In the 18th century, there existed maroon communities and triracial, isolated communities, some of which still survive in North Carolina. According to oral tradition, he recognized that the Celts, Irish and Scottish, as Asiatic. So you see what so the Celts, he's saying the Irish or Scottish, look, working on go ahead and doing this video. We talk about these original English and Irish and Scottish peoples, who they were. Were they really coming from Asia, or again, are they just using American calling it Asia? Because so who were the early Irish and Scottish and British people? All right, starting to look like they came from America. All right, check out 42 The Drop radio channel, Con Drop. Showing you the correlation. It's deep. We're heading that way. He's way more advanced. He's been covered all this stuff. All right. So we're gonna get into that as well. But again, Noble Drew Ali recognized that. He kind of knew that the Celts, or the Irish and Scottish, were as Asiatic, or what he would probably trying to say, like the Canaan, from the land of Canaan, and therefore eligible for membership in the Moorish Science Temple. The Noble Drew Ali's teachings were collected into the Holy Quran, not to be confused with the Orthodox Muslim Holy Quran. Ali's Holy Quran was a 60-page booklet comprised mostly of Christian and Holy Bible passages. You hear this? This Holy Quran, right? It's supposed to be Islamic, right? I got it. I'm going to show it to you guys. It was a 60-page booklet comprised mostly of Christian Holy Bible passages, the teachings of Marcus Garvey, and anecdotes of life of Jesus from the Levi Dowlin's New Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, and Ali's own strict codes of dress, diet, and morality, which also later be incorporated in the nation of Islam. So we're going to read that Drew Ali actually was the first who introduced the whole Islam thing to America, made it popular before even the Nation of Islam. All right, and who was really learning from who? All right, but again, his Circle 7 Holy Quran, or 7 Circle Holy Quran, was basically comprised of Christian Holy Bible passages. All right, teachings of Marcus Garvey, who was always like, let's go back to Africa, another Pan-African, right? And anecdotes of life of Jesus from Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, Aquarian, the Theological Society and all that stuff, the Blavatsky people and all that. That's the same thing he was writing. He was using from this book, from Levi Dolan's, all right, book, and Ali's own strict codes, right?